to the cloud.
All right, guys, I'm here with Mr. Messler. Is that what you want to go by this evening?
No, this is
And
pastor.
definitely not pastor. Yeah, not Mr. Pastor, not Mr. anything. Mister's a horrible word. Have you looked up Mr.? Where that really came from?
Not really, but I've heard some stories about it. I know that just like the word sir, I've heard stories about where that originated, and it's not always in good connotations.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the Mr., which, like I say, I've heard several stories too, and none of them are good. Like it sprouted from master or, so, and if you go and look up actually the hierarchy of the word Mr. or sir, it's actually a lower form of acknowledging somebody. A gentleman is the highest form.
Huh. Now that I didn't realize.
Remember like old movies and stuff? You used to see things that, they would announce, welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Yeah, they used to know it.
Yeah, they did.
But,
so,
time is a funny thing and plays tricks on us. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here was the Doctrine of Leches, which is really the Doctrine of Time, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, you could call it that. It is time related, but I think it falls under, well, technically, even though it falls under contract principles, it's still time related.
Yeah, because it deals with tacit acquiescence, basically.
Silence is acquiescence. I mean, but you wrote an article about it, and the article, it's not the same as what's the term? It slipped my mind now. Statute of limitations. It is not the same as statute of limitations.
Right. In fact, it can even have maybe contradictory events when it comes to statute of limitations.
Which, if it's not the same, that means Laches can supersede statute of limitations. Your statute of limitations may be 2 years. The Doctrine of Leches may only be a year.
Right. Absolutely. And at the same time, one of the things that crossed my mind when I was writing the article was, we hear, for instance, people quoting all the time that fraud vitiates everything. Well, hold on. The way the court looks at it, even if a situation is fraudulent, if you've been aware of the fraudulent situation and you've still been allowing it for a year or two, then they're going to tell you, so what, buddy? You've been dealing with it this long and never said anything. So why are you speaking up now?
See, and that's the thing. Everybody calls this system that is aware of it fraud, right? And they say fraud vitiates everything. But I said, wait a minute. The UCC allows for fraud.
Absolutely.
At the UCC, if you offer a negotiable instrument in good faith, whether it's legal or not, I mean, and that's where you would have to know how to write one to define whether it's legal or not. If it's missing certain things, then it's not a legal negotiable instrument. So, but other than that, of going into what is or is not, the point of the matter is, under the UCC, if you offer a negotiable instrument and someone takes it, even if it is a fraudulent instrument, it stands.
Then take the exit to
absolutely.
495 South.
And this reminds me also of the statement, I believe it was by Abraham Lincoln. He said, if it's not raised, it's laid. So if somebody doesn't bring up the problem, then guess what? Nobody's going to do anything about it unless it's brought up.
Correct.
You brought up the UCC there, and it reminded me, and I think this situation probably fits in perfectly, because UCC's got a lot of its own little rules, but it's kind of the same way. It depends on whose eyes are looking at it, how educated they are, where they spot the problem in the contract or not. Because there was a company that was, I believe they're going after some sort of damages, and they were out of New Jersey. And the name of this company, I'll just basically say, it was Big Mama and Company. Okay.
Yeah.
And all through the document, it said Big Mama and Company, although in their original filing for the company, instead of using the word and, all through that document, they used the ampersand, which is the and symbol.
Yes.
And the ampersand actually used to be a letter in the alphabet. A lot of people don't know that. I think it was like the 27th letter or whatever. But so the right set of eyes, the right attorney saw that from, the opposing party, and was like, oh, wait a minute. They've used the wrong name in this. Said, so they're freaking coming after us for damages, that this is negated, this is void.
Well, that is actually a fact, because here's why. Go back to grammar. A corporate name is written in all capital letters, right? And it doesn't have to be just letters. It can be symbols. Just because the common nomenclature of an ampersand is and doesn't mean that's what it means when you created the company. If you put Big Mama and the ampersand symbol and company, if you never defined it in your corporate charter that it is the ampersand or the and you don't have that trademarked and declared somewhere, the ampersand and the and are two different things.
Right. It's not part of the standard nomenclature of the name of the company that was filed. And it's interesting. There's some states, when you look at UCC, which I'd like UCC for some things, but other things it just makes you scratch your head. But certain states follow different things with the UCC that other states don't follow. And I noticed something yesterday, I believe that was published, where I think it was the state of Florida was no longer going to observe the word Inc. in the name of a certain company that had done a filing. And that sparked my memory of this situation with UCC with what they call like chatter or noise words. And so certain states have different words or whatever defined as chatter or noise words. And a lot of those words will be like CO for company or Inc. or LLC. A lot of states don't want that. They just want, we were talking about Big Mama and Company, now if it was Big Mama and Company Incorporated, fine. They just want Big Mama and Company. They don't want the incorporated or the INC on there. That's considered chatter. So it's amazing the little things that can throw stuff off. And like I said, it depends on the eyes that see it. Because if somebody doesn't bring it up, then it stands as fact.
Well, and that's where I really today am of the opinion. Now, I hate to put down our education system. I would never want to hurt anybody's feelings in that area. But I think after elementary school, maybe middle school, after you've got the basics of grammar, I'm going to tell you the truth. One of the fundamental books, there's actually two, but one of the fundamental books that should be brought into the education system is the Governmental Styles Manual. It is one of two 2 preeminent books on grammar, That's why there is a science to the law.
Well, I know that there's the Chicago Styles Manual,
That's
and
the other one.
there's a Philadelphia Styles Manual. But now there was something I'd heard a while ago. Do individual states all have their own Styles Manual?
That I do not know, because I didn't know about the Philadelphia Styles Manual.
Because it would make sense to me actually if each individual state had their own.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Or if they adopted, say they want to go ahead and adopt like the Chicago Styles Manual, just like businesses all over the place will adopt Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, most states have Robert's Rules of Order, which is your basics for handling a meeting. But you've got some states that don't use Robert's Rules. See, here's the problem. There needs to be a standard for grammar. Okay. So it's not a problem of whether states have their own styles manual. They might clarify certain things because the styles manuals typically are how you write law. But the governmental styles manual crosses the borders, so to speak. It's not just law, it's how to do citations when you write a book or whatever, right? And this is stuff that's not taught anymore. But if the states have their own styles manual, could it potentially lead to confusion because the grammar in one state might be different than the grammar in another state?
Yeah,
I mean, you put up a post the other day about the all caps name don't seem to matter no more.
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it does. I think at one time, maybe it was people were looking at it and going, wait, there's something odd going on here. So they thought, oh, we'll go ahead and change it. Because, for instance, my birth certificate, well, I want to call it mine because it's not. It's the registration of an organization that the state created, that the Secretary of State created. But the one I hold, the name is an upper and lower case, and it's double spaced between the first, middle, and surname.
Mm-hmm. Now, well, I shocked somebody yesterday, and I've shocked a few people over the past few weeks because I asked this question, and I've not really heard anyone ever discuss it. Why do you have two birth certificates?
I think, and this is just at this point, not something I'm going to say I know. I will say I believe, because a belief is just an opinion. It's kind of my belief that very possibly, like the one I brought home, or my parents brought home from the hospital, had like all the frilly edge. It was on tan paper, and we know they use tan paper for like real property, like land. Okay.
Yep.
And on the back of it was the footprints and the mother's fingerprints. And then, we look at the certificate of live birth, which is typically on the blue and green, or blue, green, and maybe a little bit of pink, paper, and looks pretty identical to the certificate of title on the car. It's identical to the registration of a business. If you've ever seen their business registration hanging on the wall anywhere, same exact thing. So I know what they like to play with. I know everything is really done under trust, and through trust, everything is really done with split title. So it leads me to think that it is a matter of split title. One would be a legal title, which would be the certificate of live birth. And then you would have the equitable title, which is on probably that tan paper.
Well, I have a different thought process. You're familiar with the Kentucky Revised Statute, right? 213.051.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, now if you pay, I have actually went through the laws of different states, and almost all the states are worded almost completely. If they're not identical, they're real close. Okay, not only the states, but also the federal. Now, and you will not find easily contents of what's on the birth certificate outside of the relation of that context, right?
Correct.
So now, if it's laying out in the Kentucky in KRS 213.051, in the first 4 paragraphs, it lays out how to report a lost infant. In some states, it's a foundling. In some states, it's a lost infant, or it's a infant of unknown parentage, whatever. But it's the last paragraph that's key in every single one of them. They cannot pass a law that interferes with a man's rights. That is a known fact. They have to put a remedy in everything, okay? So the last paragraph, actually, I stand corrected. I said 4. It was actually 3 paragraphs. The 4th paragraph is the key. It says in the 4th paragraph that if a birth certificate is found or obtained, and I say, wait a minute, you mean they lost it within the first 10 days? I don't think that's what it means. And I say, then if a birth certificate is found or obtained, in other words, if the biological parents ever can prove that's their child, the birth certificate then goes into a sealed folder that can only be inspected by a court of competent jurisdiction.
That's much like the situation with an adoption, isn't it?
Similar, yes. Now, here's what I think goes on. Now, I've heard rumors. I have no firsthand knowledge of this. I do believe it. It is my opinion because the federal government throws money out left and right. They pay the hospitals so much money to make the parents fill out the birth certificate paper and the Social Security card information, right?
Correct.
And they look at all innocently to the parents and say, oh, you've been through a lot. Don't worry about it. We'll file this for you. You'll receive your birth certificate in about 10 days. Now, what do they get? They get the long form from Vital Records. They never know about the first birth certificate. So when I tell people, why do you have 2? They say, what do you mean 2? I don't have 2. I said, oh, yes, you do. You have one at the county. And where is it recorded? It is recorded where you record property.
Yep.
Now, my opinion is that it is recorded where the property is recorded, but it is recorded as a lost infant of unknown parentage. That's why I have not been able to see my original one at the county level. Okay. Because if you can see the original, would it show that it was, if you saw all that documentation, would it actually prove that?
It could
So
raise
now
some
let's say that
questions.
that's what they're doing, because that's what it really could. So the one at the county, the government never wants to see that one. Now, why is that? Because the government has no jurisdiction over the flesh and blood man. Now, I brought the video to your attention a while back on bankruptcy and revised Article 9, right?
Right.
And at the 43-minute mark, Ms. LaRouche is talking about the registered organization. And at the 41-minute mark, that goes back to what we were talking about Big Mama and Company, right? The legal name.
Right. Having the
So-
correct name of the registered organization.
And what she says about the legal name is it has to be exact. It cannot be in error. So now, go back to your case. If it has to be exact for the company to owe a debt or to receive compensation for harm or injury, right? And it's not exact in the filings, guess what? You don't have a claim. Now, at the 43-minute mark, she says, starts talking about the registered organization, and the guy 2 spots to her right says, yes, and some say the state issues a birth certificate. So the government the federal government has the absolute fundamental right to regulate commerce. So when the bankruptcy happened, what did they do? They said we had to create a mechanism for the people to be able to operate in commerce, right?
And that's what I've
So,
said. They've created an
yep.
organization and they see you as being the representative or the agent for it. In fact, I've heard of a judge actually that said that you are the spokesman.
Spokesman, registered agent, same thing.
Yep.
And remember years ago, McDonald's got sued for hot coffee, right?
Right.
You couldn't sue them for the hot coffee unless service of process was done properly, right?
Correct.
Service of process to be done properly has to be given to the registered agent. So when you, as the agent of the corporation or the registered organization, receive a contract from government, be it a ticket, a summons, a charge, whatever it is, that's why you get served, because you are the registered agent.
Well, let's nail this down a little bit. For instance, that the registration of the registered organization I hold is in upper and lower case, and they send something to me that's in all caps. That's a UCC violation in commerce right there.
Yeah, that is not the legal name. Now, if you have a trademark on the all capital name, can you tell them they're in violation of copyright or trademark? Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, they're using it without authorization.
Yeah, because they're using the wrong legal name.
There's something else I wanted to bring up, because in those first 3 paragraphs, you mentioned that the word found is used. And I think did you use the word lost as well? Was that in the first 3 paragraphs?
I would have to pull the code up.
I think it is.
Let's see here.
Now, and here's the reason why I bring this up, because with people, for instance, battling mortgages or foreclosures, for instance, and I know I've done this just to have fun with the servicers, but you contact them and you're asking for information about who actually holds the note, because you know the servicer doesn't.
Yes.
And very often the terminology that they will come back with is, oh, well, we lost the note. And in their little legal realm, loss doesn't mean what we think it means, although we use it the same way ourselves without realizing it. When somebody's house gets foreclosed on and they get kicked out, and they run into somebody they know a couple of months down the road, and they ask about where they're living or whatever, what do these people say? They say they lost their house. right? The
Mhm.
terminology is being used in the same way. It's not that whoever was holding the note actually physically misplaced the note, or the dog ate it, or they lost it. No, in their terminology, loss means it was given up to someone else.
Yes. I mean, it's not like you say, you get up in the morning, you're getting ready for work, and I've lost my keys. Okay, that's a different definition. In law, lost isn't necessarily that.
Yep, exactly. It can mean that there's been a transfer done, a conveyance has been done.
Now, you bring up a good point right there, because a transfer, what about an assignment?
Correct. Yep.
An assignment is you are assigning all title rights and interest over the property to another. Now, see, here's where the things get interesting. What we discovered in 2019 through the help of Trey, she was the first person I know of that ever brought this up, because she was helping someone on a family court matter. And the lady was smart enough to have kept all the contracts from the hospital. And in the contract, in bold, capitalized letters, it told you you were giving an assignment of your property to the hospital, the property being your rights and interest to the child. And it told you in the contract, it is a lifetime contract that can only be withdrawn in writing. So
Correct.
parents are going to the hospital, signing over the child before the child is even born. Now, how many stories have you heard of medical kidnapping? And people say, they took my child at birth because of blah, blah, blah. Well, you signed the child away.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of people with different forms of medical kidnapping, even adults being medically kidnapped.
Yeah. Now, is it fraud? Yeah. Because did they tell you this could happen? No. Is it legal? Yes. You signed the contract without reading it.
Yeah, you gave an assignment to somebody else, and I would almost say not just an assignment, but I think another term that goes hand in hand with assignment is appointment.
Yeah. An
Somebody else
assignment
was
is an appointment. You are
Yeah,
appointing the property to somebody else.
exactly.
Just a, mhm.
And it reminds me of a story I heard one time about people going into court to do something that the court was fully aware that they were going to be doing. And when they showed up, the guard met them and said, "Do you have an appointment?" And he didn't mean, "Are you scheduled?" That's what a lot of us think when we hear appointment. He meant appointment in a little bit different way.
Yes.
Have you been appointed to this case?
Yeah. Well, what is the role of an attorney when they appoint an attorney? There's many factors to that, but one of the roles of the attorney is to help negotiate a settlement to the contract that all parties will agree to.
Yeah.
I had a
Yeah,
conversation with an attorney that is retired, and he is one of the top attorneys in North Carolina. He holds that title. Okay. And he asked me one day, he said, how good do you think you are at contracts? I said, Mike, everything's a contract. I looked at him and said, I don't care if it's a civil case or a criminal case. Everything is contract. He said, well, I don't agree with that. I said, really, Mike? I said, have you ever been, I said, because spent a long time as a criminal defense attorney. I said, Mike, have you ever been sitting there in court and the judge asks you questions? Did you ever ask him to define the words, or did you just presume you knew what he meant? And the look on his face was priceless. And he's been telling his older attorneys that he associates with still what I've been teaching him. He tells me, we gotta get you in a law firm. He said, you will be one hell of an attorney. I said, well, if I was to do that, I wouldn't take the bar card. He said, yes, I already am aware of that.
Well, this is one of the things that I've been saying for quite a while to people is that everything that goes on in courts, what courts are doing, doesn't matter what the case is, courts are enforcing a contract. Bottom line.
Exactly.
They are there to enforce a contract. And I've heard numerous people that have gone in under special appearance, and the special appearance is for questioning jurisdiction. I've seen a lot of people use that term special appearance, and I'm like, okay, what jurisdiction are you questioning? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, that's what special appearance is for. You're questioning a jurisdiction, Anyway, I've heard a lot of people that have gone in questioning jurisdiction, and one of their questions may be, well, where's the contract? Or where is my obligation? And I don't know how many times I've heard judges say to them, it's a social contract.
If it's a social contract, a contract still has to be written where all parties can agree.
Well, and now this is where I get into the consent issue at, because, a lot of people will be saying, I don't consent and things like that. And then you look at what the judges ask and what they point to. And what they're looking for is your conduct. They're looking for your actions. And as soon as they see actions that show, well, yeah, you've obviously consented. Well, everything's fine. You're okay using our crap until you're in trouble. And all of a sudden, you don't want to consent anymore.
Well, now let's look at what the judge, in your hypothetical situation says. You're fine with using all of our stuff. That goes to citizenship.
Yep.
Okay. What is a citizen? A citizen is one who owes allegiance to a certain government. Now, the Bible says you can only serve one master. It says you can't serve two because you will love one and hate the other. Right?
Correct. Yep.
Now, let's go back in history. The states that we called colonies started out as 13 colonies, but they officially become states when the country was founded. Now, what are states? States are sovereign countries. That's why we have a State Department. Okay. The State Department deals with.
Just like the state of Israel. State of Israel.
Just like the state of Israel. Germany is a country. It's a state. Okay. So if we have if you read the Alaska Constitution, Alaska may not be a 50th state. It's actually, according to the Constitution of Alaska, it's still a federal territory. That's an interesting little footnote where even though we think of it as a state, it's not. Okay.
But the same goes for Puerto Rico, doesn't it?
Well, Puerto Rico is not declared a state like Alaska is, right? Puerto Rico is a federal territory like Guam, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, right? What has Puerto Rico been asking for? Statehood. Now, So the states come together. Now, each of those states is a foreign jurisdiction to each other. Okay. They created the federal government, and the federal government is a foreign jurisdiction to the states. That's the reason why back in the old days, the sheriff, and to this day, the sheriff can kick the federal government out of their county. Because why? They're of a foreign jurisdiction. They have no right in the county except if they can prove a trespass on their rights. Okay. Now, if you study the court cases after the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, well, now let's go back. Before Lincoln was ever born, there was this nice law that was passed called the Northwest Ordinance.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
that
that's
was,
one of the four organic documents of the US.
yes. Now, the Northwest Ordinance is still in force and effect and still on the books. Okay. The Northwest Ordinance forbade slavery. So now, if the Northwest Ordinance forbids slavery, wow, that was a big bump. Would somebody please tell me what Lincoln passed? Why, he didn't forbid slavery, he made slavery legal. That's the
Yep.
reason why I call the prisons the new plantations, because it says slavery and involuntary servitude shall not be allowed in these United States and territories. Now, if you analyze that, which United States? Is it the 50 states? Or I don't think it is. I think it's the United States and its territories. That slavery and involuntary servitude shall not be allowed in the United States and its territories, except for the punishment of a crime where you're duly convicted by a jury of your peers. Now, so they violate the 13th Amendment every day because they never do it by a jury of your peers. They do it by plea bargain because a plea bargain is a contract. And the law is clear on this. A plea bargain is a contract. Now, so Lincoln passed that. Now, when you pay attention to a law like that, you have to pay attention to what is said and what's not said. What's not said is voluntary servitude is legal. So how did they get us to volunteer? Well, now, 3 years, see, that was in 1865. 3 years later, 1868, they supposedly ratified the 14th Amendment. I have a copy of the congressional record that says they didn't. Okay.
Well,
So
I think that would go along the same lines though with tax laws, because even say something isn't ratified, if the states are still all following it, this falls under that tacit acquiescence again.
Well, hold up. The states don't, they have to follow it for one reason and one reason alone. And this goes back to contract. Okay. Who does the 14th Amendment as originally intended to pass? Who does it apply to?
The US and the territories, right?
It applies to former slaves.
True.
It didn't apply to women. It didn't apply to state citizens. It only applied to former slaves. Now, did Lincoln free the slaves? No. If I decide, look, hey, Bryan, I got an iPhone 11 Pro Max. It's 256 gigs. I want to get a new phone. Do you want this phone? And you say, yeah, how much you want for it? I say, give me $50. You say, damn, that's a deal. By operation of law, when you give me the $50 and I give you a phone, what was that? A transfer of property, right?
There's a transfer of property, the performance has been completed and the contract is done.
Okay. So what did the federal government do after Lincoln did all this? They paid every slave owner $300 a head. Now today you would think, well, that's not a lot of money. You need to think back then. $300 that back then was a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a ton of dough. Ton of dough. And now wait a minute. If there's no slavery, how are you buying people?
Hold on. I know, right? So what happened? There was a transfer of property. The slaves were never freed. Okay. So now what happened?
They just got a new massa.
They got a new master. But that 14th Amendment did give them civil rights. What is the difference between a civil right and a unalienable right? The unalienable or unalienable, whichever way you want to pronounce it, is a right that is there by nature. It cannot be taken. It can only be waived.
Correct.
A civil right is a right that government gives you. The government giveth, and the government taketh away.
Correct. And that's exactly what happens. Say, for instance, if somebody goes away to state or federal penitentiary, that's listed as they've actually had a civil death because they've lost their civil rights.
Yeah. So now, if originally passed, see, it's still, the 14th Amendment still did not affect the rest of the country at that time. Now, 5 years later, there was two important cases. The slaughterhouse cases and U.S. versus Anthony. Now, y'all remember Susan B. Anthony, right? We were told fought for the civil rights of the people, for women to vote in the U.S. election. Go read the case. The judge in U.S. versus Anthony gives a great explanation of the two citizenships. The 50 states have their own citizens, and the United States has its own citizens.
Yeah, correct.
I go back to what I said earlier. You can only serve one master. You can't sue a government for rights as a state or sovereign. Do what now? What'd you say?
So yeah, you kind of broke up there the last 30 seconds. I don't know if it was you or me.
It is possibly me. So Chisholm v. Georgia and Hill versus Hinkle says the people of the state are sovereign. So how does the system get us to waive our sovereignty? A U.S. citizen is not sovereign. Why is a U.S. citizen not sovereign? Well, go back to U.S. versus Anthony. She went to prison for voting in the United States election. The reason why she went to jail was because she was a New Yorker. Her nationality was a state citizen of the state of New York. She did not have a right to vote in the United States election. That is a benefit or privilege. The 14th Amendment says privileges and immunities clause. It doesn't say rights and immunities.
Exactly.
The The government can only tax benefits and privileges. They can't tax rights. So how did they get us to consent to this? That's where you fast forward to the bankruptcy. They sold everybody a bill of goods and said, yeah, you got to, this Social Security Act, you can do it for your benefit. Oh, what did I just say? Benefits and privileges?
Yep.
Now that's where we get into the birth certificate being a trust and the bank account is your social. And technically it's not even your social, because if you look at the back of it, it tells you that it is property of the Social Security Administration and it has to be relinquished to them upon request. It's not even yours.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've said to people a lot of times that have asked me, oh, well, don't you own a social security card or don't you own a driver's license? I'm like, no, absolutely not. If it can be taken from you, evidently you don't own it.
I got a buddy of mine in California. He got in some trouble he had some medical marijuana, but you know, the county didn't care that it was medical. So he goes to court and they tried to get him to admit to the name, right? He never would do it. He told the judge, Your Honor, I cannot commit fraud in this court. What do you mean? Well, I am led to believe I do not own this name. Oh, what do you mean? Well, look at the Social Security card. It says it is property of the United States government, and that name is owned by the United States. And you can call me peaceful inhabitant. And I'll tell you what, him and the judge went rounds for a little while, but he won. The judge ended up finally breaking down because he would not fall for any argument. And the judge finally called him peaceful inhabitant.
Yep.
Shit, the name on the card doesn't even mean what people think it means. See, they set this system up to where what you see isn't always what it is.
Well, I've tried to explain that to people in the way of where I was living at one time, and I had reason to believe that the owner was not making his payments to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And so I set up a escrow account, and it was named with the address. That was the name of the account, was the address. Well, since this man supposedly owned the property, wouldn't you think he could go in because he had a claim on that address? No, he couldn't. And I let the people that were handling the rental agreement know that, hey, since I have reason to believe this, I'm putting into this escrow account. When I am satisfied that everything is okay, I will release those funds back to you. They never said a word to me. And in fact, a few months later, I used that for part of the down payment for a house.
Nice. Yeah, that's how you remain in honor. You don't stop making your payments. You put it in an escrow account. That way, if you win, you get the money back. If they win, you made your payments.
Absolutely.
Now, a minute ago, we talked about what the name on the card. I said, if you do a Google search, SSA does not recognize middle name. You're going to see the first one or two, maybe third link is going to be defining the legal name. Go to paragraph 2. It says that how to define the name and how to write it. It says the first and middle is your given name. Have you ever heard the term Christian given name?
Exactly.
That goes in the first name slot. and the family name goes in the last name slot. Okay. Now, if you look on a SF, that's Sam Frank, SF5S, 5S as in 5 Sam. So an SF5S form, and you scroll down to the bottom of the form where you would fill out your information, you got 2 lines in box 1. The line on top is titled Name to Appear on Card. And then it has a little footnote, if name is different than below. Okay. But it has first, middle, last. Well, if they don't recognize it, the middle name, and they don't tell you not to put anything in the middle box, and you presume you are supposed to, what's going to happen? You're going to put the middle name in the middle name box, and the account isn't going to be set up properly for your benefit.
Yep.
That's why government documents typically do not have your middle name, because why? They don't recognize middle names.
Well, you know, and this reminds me of what you were talking about with the certificate of live birth that, you know, normally comes to the home 10 days or so after the baby's delivered. And they send along a little letter with it. And they ask you to closely inspect it. And if there are any errors, to please notify them.
Yeah.
Well,
But
evidently there is a possible error there we should be identifying.
oh, what is that?
You know, I've had numerous ideas and thoughts about it. And this goes back to what was said there on revised UCC 9 and with, you know, them talking with Judge Hillman and stuff. And if you look at the certificate of live birth as compared to a business registration, which looks identical, or the certificate of title for the vehicle, which really looks identical. The certificate of title for the vehicle, for instance, you know, like for instance, on this one I'm in right now, it says that it is for a Ford Crown Victoria Police Interceptor.
Yes.
Now, you go to the certificate of live birth, and the only identifiable thing that you might see there that would give you a hint as to what it might possibly be for is the term male or female. Now, male and female are scientific terms. They're
Yeah.
not biological terms. They're scientific. They used to say boy or girl on them.
Okay.
But now they say male or female. Okay, well, male or female what? A horse, a dog that's been papered, a male or female what? I mean, even horses, your prized horses have birth certificates. You can go online and look at their birth certificates too.
Yeah, well, that goes back into defining who you are. See, one of the hardest things for people to do is to write who they are. Because if you don't figure out who you are, the government will define who you are. This is an example, male or female. What about the drug code? Man and other animals. I can't think of the guy's name that did the video on it, but he did a First Amendment claim because the FDA sent in the DEA after him, the Texas DEA, and was suing them for $25 million a year. And when he discovered that, he wrote a First Amendment claim saying, wait a minute, I know grammar. Okay, that I'm not an animal, I'm a creation of God, right? What about in Black's Law Dictionary? You go to look up the word human. In some of the dictionaries, it says monster, right?
Right.
If you don't define who you are, they will define you for you, and you're not going to like their definition.
And that goes directly to something I've said for a long time, and that is, if you don't declare who you serve, they will choose for you as well.
Well, let's go back to citizenship. If a citizen is one who owes allegiance to a respective government, now I know I claim to be a Christian, okay? And lately, what's been coming to me is this. And I've discussed this with 2 attorneys, and they both said I was right. How do you prove in court that you're a Christian? Well, one guy said, well, I got a baptismal certificate. No, that don't prove you're a Christian. That just proves you were baptized. And that's questionable because unless you do an affidavit attesting to the facts of that birth certificate, because you're the only one and the pastor that would have firsthand knowledge, it would be considered hearsay. Okay. Just like the birth certificate at Vital Records has been deemed double hearsay. Okay. Now, how do you prove in court? You can sit up there and say, well, this is what I believe. The court can't see that. You can say it all you want. You can scream it to the rooftops. The courts can't see it. I had a guy says, no, but they have to respect my beliefs. I said, look, I tell you what, if you ever try to appeal a case, do it without the transcripts and see how far that gets you, because they can only see what's on paper.
That's right. Let me give you a little scenario that I had, a real life situation I had. Shortly after, because I was thinking about these things along the same lines, and if you don't declare who you serve, they're going to choose for you. And you look at the first sentence of the First Amendment, that was placed there very appropriately, I think, that said that Congress can make no law regarding an establishment of religion.
Correct.
And it doesn't quite mean what people think. I mean, an establishment can be me and my household. That's an establishment. Well, have we declared? I mean, go to the book of Joshua. I think it's in Joshua. It says, he said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He made a declaration of it, right? And shortly after I had gotten the ordination, I was pulled over because they didn't like the dark tint on the police interceptor I was driving at the time. And in the course of the stop, the officer saw the card in my hand. He says, oh, you're an ordained minister? I said, yes, I am. Thank you very much. He says, just hold on a second. He ran back to his car. He must have just ran a quick check to see if I'm wanted for anything, came right back and said, you have a good day. Goodbye. This stop didn't last even a minute and a half long. I was in shock. But at the same time, you go back and think about, like in the Labor Code, Article 53, that it said that if the standing army, which means people with a U.S. flag on their shoulder, they qualify as standing army, should encounter a group of people and a minister is in their midst, he is not to be seen as a POW and is to be released, unless he wants to stay behind and administer to the other POWs.
Yes. Now, what got me thinking hard about this, though, is the term a contract with God, right? So I went to Westlaw and I said, let me look it up. I found, I think, 5 cases. And I didn't read all 5 of them, but I did read one of them. And all 5 cases, I did scan over them, and nobody won their case. And they typically won for the same reason. It just doesn't clearly spell it out. Now, one of the cases that stands out, the guy said when he was asked, where is your contract? He said, it's in my DNA. Can the court see that? No. What did none of them do? Write their contract. Now, what does the Bible teach? If you've accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior, It teaches that you are a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. You can't be a citizen of the kingdom of heaven and a citizen of any worldly government. The Bible says you're to be in the world, not of the world. You can't serve two masters. You will love one and hate the other. And if you're serving a worldly master, you're definitely going to hate your heavenly master.
And you know what? Before anybody wants to stop and think, well, hold on. The government doesn't pay any attention to religious or spiritual stuff. They don't care about that kind of thing. Well, if
Look at
you
the
think,
Vatican.
well, not just the Vatican, but if you think that, go take some time and go to the United States, which is located in Washington, D.C. Walk around Washington, D.C. and tell me what you see. You're going to see statues and monuments put up to all different Greek gods. You're going to see the statue of who I believe the god is and God we trust, which is Mercury or Hermes. He has his own little rotunda there. And his consort, Persephone, sits on top of the Capitol building. She's a black statue, and it's the only one that's never lit up at night.
Yep.
They are the
Now,
gods of the underworld.
yep. If you don't think that the government respects it, look at all the government. What was it under Reagan? I don't remember the public law, but they declared the Bible the book of the country or something.
270 or 273 public law, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was, I remember a 3, so it's probably 273. But yeah, they declared the Bible. So they do respect this stuff. The elite, they are Luciferians. They do respect religion. They do not want you, the people, to respect it.
Absolutely.
They want you to be a nation of heathens.
Absolutely. And to just nail that home and prove it, look at what's allowed and not allowed in their public indoctrination camps, in the public schools. They took prayer out, took the Bible out, and they are very happy for you to be an atheist. Very, very happy to promote atheism because they don't want you to know the things that they know.
Exactly. You still got people that believe in evolution when all of your lead scientists don't believe in evolution anymore. That's why you've got this new theory called panspermia, that some ET planted us here. That's a load of crap. Now, do I believe in ET? No. Do I believe now? Can I say they don't exist? No, I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. You'd have to have the whole entire knowledge of the universe. But what I do believe, and I know it's off subject of law, is they've proven multi-dimensions. I do believe in extra dimensional beings. I do believe in that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think they do too. That's why you got CERN trying to open up a portal to other dimensions.
Well, I would say there's a lot of things that point that direction. And you can go back to L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons in the desert there in northern Nevada, I believe it was, on the border of Utah, where they opened a porthole. And there's been many people over time who've done this. And look at, for instance, the Collins elite. What were the Collins elite trying to do? The same exact thing, trying to tap in to these other entities.
Well, here's one for you. I'll tell you somebody older than L. Ron Hubbard. Nachmanides. He was a 13th century Jewish sage. And the rumors are, I don't have firsthand knowledge of this because I haven't been able to find the book yet. I trust the source, let's just put it that way, of the person that said it. But Nachmanides, just from studying the book of Genesis, proved we live in 10 dimensions. 4 we can see, 6 we cannot. Now, what is science proven today? We live in 10 dimensions. 4 we can know, 6 we can only measure down to a 32nd. They know they're there, but they can't find them. That's what they're trying to do, is find them.
Yeah, exactly. And that, well, and they're trying to access them, which to me smells a lot like the Tower of Babel. But if you go like even 200 years after Nachmanides was doing this, you've got John Dee and Edward Kelly, who were doing the
Yep.
same thing.
Now, now, a lot of people probably are saying, well, y'all went really off topic and got away from the law. The law relates to all of this. The Bible says what? The law is a schoolmaster. Okay? Well, if the law is a schoolmaster, what is it teaching you? See, if you can be lawless and suffer the consequences, and I really do believe we are in a lawless country. People don't know what law is.
Absolutely.
They're
Well,
just roaming around. But
well,
the
you can go-
ultimate law is your natural fundamental principles.
Yep. And the principles and the laws that you are following in your life. And that's why the founders talked a lot about living a life of piety. But if you've got a situation, if you are in a scenario where there are people who have, say, so-called sovereign immunity or things like that, then guess what? And these people hold office, then that right there points you directly in the direction, yes, you live in a lawless society.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, shoot, Congress proves that. Look at COVID. They pushing it on the people, but Congress is exempt.
Correct.
Pfizer's exempt. FDA's exempt. I mean, that's a lawless society.
Even when medical insurance was being forced on everybody, who was exempt from that as well.
Look, they're actually starting to push up the rates on insurance for people that don't have a vaccine. And I don't think it's a vaccine. If it's not the mark of the beast, it's sure sounding like it is.
Well,
I think it's a precursor.
Yeah, I'm not gonna dive into exactly what I see happening with that. But this goes back to like another one of these chaps like Edward Kelly or John Dee. This goes to things that Rudolf Steiner wrote and what he claimed was going to be happening in the future when it came to medicine. And he spelled this all out exactly. But the purpose behind it had nothing to do with your health, not your
No, it
physical
doesn't.
health. It had to do
Well,
with your mental state and looking for that God gene within you and eliminating it.
that's right. Now, here is something you got to consider though, because have you ever looked? See, commerce, you got two main laws that have run this world for its entire existence. You have the laws of contracts and you have the common law, right? The common law has always been fluid. The common law is fluid because it is what is common to the people in the respective area.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. The law is fluid, and a perfect example showing that was that originally the word law was spelled with 2 L's, and it was to resemble 2 legs because it was alive, it was moving.
Well, yes, Yeah, but that was the common law, because what is common to us here in the United States might not be common to, okay, let's give an example.
I'll give you a perfect example right now. It might have a trigger word in it though. And
What?
this happened up on Canada 5 or 6 years ago. Was that
What?
somebody from I won't mention a country, I'll just say an Eastern country, was
Yes.
being accused of I believe it was raping a couple girls or something like that. And what the judge came out and said, and this was where this slippery slope of social justice really started being seen. The female judge came out and said, you know what, where this gentleman is from, what he did isn't really a bad thing. And he's not lived here very long. So we have to respect the common law he grew up with.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
You're
Because
talking about the same case? That's
not
funny.
the same case,
Oh.
but the very similar example. You look, we forgot as a nation how to raise our children as to be husbands, wives, mothers, and fathers. Okay. We treat our children past the age of majority, which is 18. We still treat them as children, right? So when they get out in the real world, they're not prepared. Now, go to the Middle East, Israel, for example. They raise their sons and daughters to be husbands, wives, mothers, and fathers. They have the bar mitzvah at the age of 13, where they declare him a man. Over here, to say that he's a man at 13 would be scoffed at. So you have two different cultures. The common law is different between the cultures. That's what I mean by fluid. It depends on the culture where you're at.
And let me tell
Now,
you something. If you want to be shystered by somebody, if you want to see a pro, look at somebody from the Middle East, because
oh
they
yeah,
learn the word games and things like that when they're really young.
yes. Yes, they did, because they had to survive.
Yep.
Now, what is not fluid is contracts. Keeping your word. It is the simplest law there is. If
Well,
you say you're going to do it, do it.
yeah, it used to be, your word used to be your bond. And nowadays people have no clue what that even means.
No, they don't. Now, now here's the thing though. There was a debate centuries ago. What was the more powerful law in the United States? Was it contract law or the common law? If you haven't read the book, Clerk's Praxis, that's our short version of it. It is, I may not get the title 100% correct, but it is the jurisdiction and practice of the courts of admiralty in 3 parts. That book showed me that admiralty / maritime is not what people think. This was written by an attorney in the late 1800s, and he was using the expert commentaries of his day. Admiralty jurisdiction, yes, was primarily, it says it in the book, law of the sea. And a lot of people say that they brought law of the sea onto the land. No, they didn't. The Constitution gave the right to the federal government to regulate commerce. What travels over sea and what travels over borders? Commerce. One of the things it says in the book, and I've given you a crude paraphrase, so do not say I'm quoting it word for word and somebody comment on the YouTube say that is not what it says. But there was a war back in his day that the admiralty jurisdiction was at war with the common law. The common law won because the people knew their rights. They knew the law. When this country was founded, what was the two books everybody had on their desk, on their tables? They had either the 1599 Geneva Bible or the 1611 King James, and they had Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. They knew the law.
Yep, they were all involved in commerce, and they had to know the law. They
That's
had to
right.
know what they could do and couldn't do. And I'll say at the same time, I spent probably upwards of 20 years working on the waters, and spent my time primarily in either federal waters or international waters. And the laws out there are very, very different than they are here on land.
Yes, they are. And they have to be for the safety of the vessels.
Yep, they got to take care of the vessels, you got to take care of the cargo, and the rules and
And
the
the
laws
people.
are, and the people, but not so much sometimes the people, but it's a whole lot broader.
Well, yeah.
The laws are a lot broader and a
Now,
lot looser.
yeah. So that's why I said, that maritime law isn't law of the sea, it's the law of nations. It is contract law, because contract law between nations is not fluid. It is rigid. That's why Admiralty Maritime is a subset of the law of nations, because why? That goes back to the kings and kingdoms. The kings would have treaties with other kings, and there was certain rules that would be considered commerce.
Well, you know what, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really believe that what happened with the UCC, for instance, that it was nothing more than really kind of a codification of maritime law, and nailing it down for the commercial purposes. And that's the closest you would see maybe to maritime coming on land.
Actually, the UCC says what it is. The UCC says it is the codification of common law of contracts. It's also why the UCC is vague, because contracts are fluid as written. You're allowed to do contracts any way you and the other party agrees. The rules of contracts are not fluid, okay? The contract makes the law. In other words, what did you agree to? Are you keeping your word?
And that's something that I think people really, that needs to be nailed home. People need to comprehend that. And because everybody's like, well, where's the law? Where's the law? And that's the bottom line right there, is the contract makes the law, period.
Well, go back to most statutes and codes. Let's go to you go into a restaurant, eat your food, and walk out and get arrested for not paying. You get charged with theft. Really, what's the basis of that charge? You violated a contract. Where's the contract? You went in with the intent to do business. The contract was implied. The terms of the contract was the menu. If they fix your food and they fix it right and you eat it, you pay for it. If they
Yeah.
didn't fix it right, what do? They throw it away at their cost, and then they fix it again. And if it's right this time, you eat it.
The performance of
And
the
then,
contract is complete. You know, I
yeah,
had a situation one time where I was at a truck stop, and it was not a place I regularly went to at all, almost never went to. But I was sitting there at the counter, and I looked through the window into the kitchen and just kind of shook my head. I was like, oh my gosh, there was a girl working in the kitchen that I knew she could not stand me. And so when I got my food, it was not anywhere as close to what I had ordered. And I'm sure she was back there just laughing, right? And I told them, I
yeah.
said, yeah, no, thank you. I don't want this. Well, you got to pay for it. I said, no, I don't. Because me completing the performance of the contract would have been not just them delivering the food, but me eating it. And that's my agreement right there. They ended up calling the police. And the police came, and the police were like, well, did he eat the food? And they're like, no. It's like, they're like, well, he doesn't owe anything then.
They didn't like that, did they?
No, not at all. She wasn't
Now,
laughing anymore after that.
now let's go back. So now hopefully people got a basic good enough understanding of contracts. Now let's go back to the whole thing with citizenship again. You sit down and write your papers like when you are working for a company. You fill out papers and it asks you the all important question: are you a U.S. citizen? Do you ever look at that paper and say, well, what does that actually mean? Now, if we go back to U.S. versus Anthony and the discussion we had earlier about she didn't have a right to vote in the U.S. election. Now, if you look up a case, all you got to do is do a search for the word Ashwander, Ashwander, and you'll find the case because that is a unique name. But the Ashwander rules come from that case. And rule number 6 says that if you accept a benefit or privilege from a statute or code, the court will not pass upon a constitutional challenge to the statute or code. Now, this is where what you said earlier about the word may not mean what you think. It doesn't mean they will not pass as in, oh, yeah, whatever. We're not even going to bother with it. No, pass means they're not going to look at it because you decided to contract with the government and accept that benefit or privilege. You can't come back later once you've accepted the contract and the benefit and challenge its constitutionality.
Well, and that goes back to, again, talking about spirituality, and they totally observe spirituality, and the scripture says that the borrower is servant to the lender. So if you accept the benefit, you hold liability, and that's a maxim of law.
Yeah, now it is debatable on a Federal Reserve note because they don't give you any other option up front to pay for anything, to use the term loosely. Okay. So learning how the system works will greatly benefit the people, but the system don't want that. The system doesn't want you to know how it works, because why? Now, you said you weren't going to touch on it, but I will. Luciferase 060606. Have you read the patent?
Yep, yep. And that same chemical is actually in some fish. It makes them
Yes.
glow.
Well, the difference between what's in the fish is it's natural. It's not going to have the same effect on you. They've modified it and added it to hold the graphene oxide. Now, here's the deal. If you actually go look, they're finally admitting it. I saw a video the other day of some scientists showing these graphene oxide nanobots. It was absolutely amazing that what they were getting these things to do. They would grow, they would reproduce. But the reason I bring up that patent, now a lot of people on the left will say, oh, the news media said that's a conspiracy. Well, it's not. If you go read it,
I watched the same video.
Yeah.
And those things would pretty much get up and walk off the scientist's plate underneath the microscope.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing that deal with luciferase, though. It attaches you to the blockchain. Now, a lot of people says, well, what's the big deal? Well, if you don't study crypto, and I don't think some of the people I listen to have put two and two together yet. The bankers that say own the Federal Reserve, they're getting ready to get rid of cash. They're wanting all banks to be switched over to the blockchain and cryptocurrency by 2025. When you go back to what it says in Revelations, without it, you can't buy nor sell nor do anything without it. If according to the patent, you will be attached to the blockchain. That will be your wallet, and you will receive your rations of money, and I use that term loosely, for being good citizens. And if you are not, guess what? They can cut your wallet off and you can't buy anything. Now, what just come out this week? That the DOJ has asked the government to investigate and see about developing a way to cut off crypto wallets.
Yep.
I said they're going to get rid of cash because they want to control and track everything. Before Trump left office, there was a story. They made a big bust for some trafficking organization. If it was drugs, people, something, I don't remember, but they used the hash that was created or the ledger to follow the Bitcoin where it went. And once it got to its destination, they came in and picked them up. And those ledgers are built on the blockchain. Now, here's the thing about blockchain. If you have, like, one of the fastest growing things right now is the decentralized web, right? It is a blockchain web, as in websites that are built on the blockchain. The blockchain security is so good that only the owner of the account can take down whatever he put up. It can't be erased. You thought the internet didn't forget anything? The blockchain has no way to forget unless the owner of the account erases it.
Yep.
Or
Totally
changes
locked down.
It is totally locked down. If you're attached to the blockchain, everything you do is permanently etched in that AI system. That's why I believe Revelations 18, come out of Babylon, my people, so you don't take part in her plagues. That's why I believe knowing this stuff and separating yourself is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's, hundreds at least, so probably little processes out there of people do this, do that. I mean, one of the big ones has always been, UCC filings and stuff like that, which, I mean, you're still operating in-house. The only true way is just a total separation. Get out of Babylon.
No, I don't I don't completely agree with you on that. Okay. Now, do I believe in what's called the secured party creditor process? Yes. Is it the fix it? No. It's only the beginning. Do you have to do that to be a secured party? No. If you know the principles, you don't have to have a birth estate trust. You don't have to have a business. You just got to know the principles. Okay.
Well, it's about
The
knowing who you are.
purpose, it's about knowing who you are and knowing the rules to the game. Now, let's say though you do want to run a business. My birth estate trust is how I run my business. Now, you're going to run your business. That's good. And if the government created it to do business, should you not be setting up your business with the proper agencies? I found a document a while back. You know the one I'm talking about. I sent it to you. The woman was from Mexico. She did the secured party process in 2009 with her Mexican birth certificate after she came to this country. She was, I think she might even, I don't think she was born here.
No, she wasn't.
She registered, yeah, she registered her secured party stuff with the Securities and Exchange Commission. It is still on their website because I gave you the link.
Yeah, it reminded me of another one I had seen a few years ago. That was a woman in California who had done it as well.
That's the woman. She was from California.
Right. Yeah. This was California also, but I remember looking at it going, gosh, I remember seeing something similar, and I don't think it was the same one. So, I mean, this has been done by
Okay.
multiple people, I'm saying, you know.
Now, see
And
that I only know of one other person that did that. But here's the thing. I've got mine registered with sam.gov with a cage code, private US DOT number. And I will tell you this firsthand. When you go through the questionnaire for the DOT number, I made a big discovery. They absolutely know the right to travel.
there you go.
Just based on the questions they asked and how you answered. Okay. Now, not only that, it's registered with FinCEN. Why? What is a financial institution? If you sit down at a closing table to sign for a mortgage, you become a private banker, you are at a financial institution. If you ever accept credit cards, you're a financial institution, or debit cards for that matter. Check card, any card, check card, debit card, credit cards, you're a financial institution. Who has the exclusive right to regulate money? Congress. So they give you a system to operate in commerce, treat it like it's supposed to be, and register it with the right people for what the intention is.
Well,
Now,
you know, I would say it's funny. I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I wasn't given full disclosure." Well, they've got to actually, right in the IRC, the Internal Revenue Code, I believe is where I saw that. That it says what you just stated, that, you know, by using some of these instruments, these financial instruments, you are claiming you are a banker, and by signing their documents, you claim that you are fully aware of the laws. Well, wait a second, who's at fault here? Did you ever ask them for full disclosure? They're not required to give it to you unless you ask them for it. But by
hey,
signing it, you are actually making a criminal act, because you're claiming to have full knowledge of something that you don't have full knowledge of.
That's true too, but what else? What else is the maxim for that? Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yeah, he that will be fooled, let him.
Now, when I got my sam.gov cage code, I had to go get my Dun and Bradstreet number. Now, it's not a regular DUNS number. It's a government DUNS number. Okay. There's a special link. There's two sides to DUNS. You got the one side, then you've got a government side where you get your DUNS number. Now, when I went through that process, they said your sam.gov, they kept emailing me back. This is supposed to be a sole prop. I said, no, sir, it's a trust. They finally called me and I said, look, I will send you the documents. And it was so difficult because of the firewalls to send them anything. I would attach a picture, a PDF, whatever. We finally got it to go through. The officer, the Army guy that was there, the officer, he said, I finally got it. He looked at it. He said, oh, you're right. It is a trust.
Duh.
So there is so much that I've done so far that people have no idea. If they created it for you to do commerce, then use it. If you don't want to use it for what it's intended for, then learn the law to learn how to be free. But you have to establish who you are and where your allegiance lies.
You can't be lukewarm.
You cannot be lukewarm. You can't be a stateless person. What is your state? You know, Jazzalise. She actually was declared a sovereign by the Secretary of State. Okay. When have you ever heard the Secretary of State in DC calling somebody? They called her.
Yep.
Now, why did they call her? To question her on her paperwork. And once they figured out she knew what she was talking about and she had no contracts with the United States, they said, yep, you're a sovereign. You will have your passport booking card in the morning. And sure enough, it was handed to her in hand that next morning. Okay, so there's many ways to get there. She done it differently than some. But one of the things that she did is she created her state. Her family trust is a religious trust where she declares where she is a member of that religious trust. So that goes back to what you said. You don't think the government respects that? Oh, yes, they do.
And more specifically, really what they were doing, Jazzalise, when they were questioning her, is they were testing her.
That's
and so
right.
all
They
these
were
people
testing her.
that, yep, all these people that want a template for this or that, forget about it, guys. Because if you just get some random template and sign your name to the bottom of it and send it out, that means you have no clue what it's really details, what it's really all about. And when the day comes that they test you, and that day will come, and probably maybe even multiple times that you will be tested, you have to be able to stand on what you've done. If you can't stand on what you've done, it means nothing.
Look, people ask me, can I do templates for them? Yeah, but and I'll pay you for them. No, you can pay me for them. That's fine. I take donations. Will I do you a template? No. And here's why. Because if I am not willing to teach you how to defend it, I'm doing you an injustice. Because sooner or later, you remember the old adage, all roads lead to Rome?
Yep.
Rome today is the courts. One day you may be in front of Rome. If I have give you a template and turned you loose and not taught you how to defend it, I have done you no justice. I won't name names of some of the gurus I know. I will not endorse for that reason.
Well, and even go. I mean, if people want to hear it, live for themselves, or I guess Memorex has it live, or Memorex. 2 years ago, I believe it was this last July, when Mike Pompeo was in Israel on stage with Benjamin Netanyahu, and Mike Pompeo said, "The United States is the new Rome, and DC is the new Jerusalem." And
I did not know that.
you look at the look on Benjamin Netanyahu's face, and Benjamin Netanyahu didn't blink an eye.
I did not know that. If you can find that video, I want to see that.
I've got it posted on one of my WordPress links.
I will definitely have to go through that then, because that is fascinating.
Yep, you should be able to identify the correct link by the title of it, the new Rome.
But people, the average person out there, what I've discovered, and it may hurt some people's feelings when I say this, but I'm going to be straight up honest. I'm not going to hold no punches. Most people don't care to learn. They are in a situation, they want a quick fix. You got to remember, this system was built over 150 years. It was probably started with Lincoln. Okay. They had to set the foundation at that point. And that was 150 years ago, give or take.
I personally believe it started in 1789. Started in
And
1789 in September, when it says that Congress vacated their offices to make room for the new government.
well, actually, I don't know about that, because I think that was when the United States Congress was started under the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. But go back to Lincoln. Congress left their office without assigning a new day. And what did Lincoln do under his war powers? He conquered the legislature and brought them back with their wives under the barrel of a gun. Wait a minute, I thought there was supposed to be 3 separate governments. That means the legislature is supposed to be free. But ever since the Lieber Code's been passed, there's been a national emergency every single year. So the president became a dictator or king.
Everything falls under the executive office. And this is why, one of the founders made the statement, Patrick Henry, in fact, made the statement. He strongly disliked the Constitution, as he said flat out, this will give the president more powers than a king.
Yeah, he took it from the other 2 branches. Look,
Yeah.
If you let's analyze this. Let's analyze this a few things. I had a conversation and I made the attorney's jaw drop. I said, let's analyze the bar card. It's called a license. Which branch of government has the sole authority to issue licenses? The executive branch. I said, now why is the Supreme Court issuing a license if it's not a legislative court by Congress and under the delegation of powers doctrine under the control of the executive branch?
Exactly. When you get technical, because it falls under the executive office.
People say, no, it doesn't. It's under Article 3. Wait a minute. You got 3 branches of government. You got Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3, and all 3 have their own courts. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 9, and Clause 17 gave Congress the power to create inferior tribunals. Now, through the delegation of powers doctrine, let's see, first let's go to Article 2, that's your military courts. We know those don't apply. Then you got Article 3, which was your common law courts, which you have next to no access to. Now, go back to Article 1. Under the delegation of powers doctrine, Congress created certain laws. For example, Title 42, that goes under Department of Health and Human Services. Through delegation of powers doctrine, it was handed to okay, now you can hear me. So
Yep, you're
now
back.
what I said was, yeah, for some reason I went into that bridge and it just freaking kicked me off and put me right back on.
And
Now,
it put you on mute also.
yeah, so at least now I'm not muted. So now let's go back to what I was saying. Title 42 falls under Department of Health and Human Services. Department of Health and Human Services in turn is all administrative agencies are under the executive branch. So now, what does Department of Health and Human Services regulate? They
Can I say-
regulate Department of Social Services at the state level. And then you have family court, which is an arm of DSS/CPS, which falls under the executive branch.
And throw CDC in there too.
Well, I was just giving one example.
Yep.
You got the
I mean-
CDC, that falls under the executive branch. It's an administrative agency, but there's some evidence that it's actually a private corporation. But that's neither here nor there. Now you go to the tax court. You got the IRS. It has its own court called tax court. The judges are not judges. They're operating in their ministerial capacity as an arm of the agency. Traffic court. They are an arm of the Department of Motor Vehicles for commercial vehicles. Okay. You can go on and on and on. Every one of these administrative courts, they're not judges. They are in their ministerial capacity under the arm of an agency.
Okay, let me ask you something here now. And I mean, this should be blatantly obvious to a lot of people. But when we're dealing with all of these various agencies, okay, and organizations or whatever,
Mhm.
they are no different than they're mere associations, is what they are. Department of Motor Vehicles is an association, and
Yeah.
of course, by law, international law, even, you have the right of association. That's why you have the right to join, like the VFW or the Moose. Those are little private associations also. But people need to read the law forwards and backwards, because now if you've got the right to associate, then that also means you have also the right to not associate, and forced association is against the law, even internationally. So what's being done?
Yeah. Forced
with, like,
association could also be involuntary servitude.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why it's illegal. But then again, aren't you forced to associate? Or they attempt to enforce association on you? Oh yeah, you've got to join, you've got to agree to all the bylaws and codes of the Department of Motor Vehicles in order to get the driver's license. Well, I'm
I'll tell you
sorry,
what.
that's forced association.
Take it to court, because here's the deal. If the judge is honest, a driver's license is what? It's a contract. Can the court force a contract is what needs to be asked. And the judge is not going to say yes. A forced contract is servitude or slavery. and it violates Article 1, Section 10, the contract clause. Now, let's go, since I brought that up, let's go back to the right to work. I mean, you got some states that say, like Pennsylvania is not a right to work state. And a lot of people don't understand that. And they
Because
get
it's a
mad.
strong union state. That's why.
Well, no, they get mad because they say, I have a right to work and provide for my family, but they're right, but wrong in application. So I went to North Carolina on Westlaw and looked up just one day. Because I knew my theory was right. You do have the right to work. Okay. And I looked in North Carolina because North Carolina is a right to work state. And they had a document in there that explained it. And it said, the basics is this: you have the right to work for yourself. You do not have the right to work for another. Now, why is that? Can the government force a contract? No. You got to look at what it is. See, this is why Obamacare was so bad, because why? Nobody's bringing up nobody is touching Article 1, Section 10 in a lot of these cases, in a lot of these laws. I called an attorney in Texas a while back. He is not friends to the bar. And he was suing because he didn't want to join the bar. And I called him because I said, I read your complaint and everything. And I said, but you're missing one argument. He said, what is that? I said, nobody's bringing up Article 1, Section 10, the contract clause. You cannot be forced to contract. And he said, yeah, but they've pretty much diluted that. I said, really? I said, since when is the Constitution, when has it been stricken from the Constitution?
Yep.
Okay. You can't, so you have a right to work. Right now, we've got a crisis of employment, right? We got all these people refusing to take the jab, and they're losing their job, and they have certain skills, but they do not know how to set their life up properly to be able to be self-employed. I don't like that term, but you get the analogy.
Well, one of the things I've said, the past few months is that really what's happening is people very possibly are going to be forced to do what they should have learned how to do in the first place.
Yeah. Because now they have to now to survive. I mean, now people are going to be forced to grow your own food, but guess what? Because people are US citizens and the government has a right to regulate commerce, right? They're trying to pass laws to make it legal for US citizens to grow food, because why?
Yeah, that's an act of domestic terrorism. Those people, there's no way they should be allowed to do that.
Actually, yeah, I know that, but it's because you're a US citizen and they're protecting their commerce. You want to be able to, look, go read Jones v. Timmer from 1993, and people will get an idea the difference of the two citizenships. You want your rights back, quit being a US citizen.
Well, you go to the Code of Federal Regulations, 27 CFR 7211, and you look at the crimes that are listed there, and they aren't crimes because it's against a contract or because it's harming another human being. No.
Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. No. That's where you're wrong.
No, hold on. They're listed as crimes because they are a crime against federal revenue.
Exactly. Federal revenue is first. That's taxes. But if you look at the list, some of them are injurious crimes.
Some can be, but that's not the reason that's listed in the header.
Yeah, it's because
telling
they're
you,
commerce.
yeah, these are crimes against federal revenue.
Let's see, 27 CFR
7211.
72.11. Now let's see here. Ah,
Yeah, addiction to marijuana.
there it is, commercial crimes. Any of the following types of crimes, federal or state. Offenses against the revenue laws, that's your taxes.
Yep.
Burglary, counterfeiting, forgery, kidnapping, larceny, robbery, illegal sale, possession of deadly weapons, prostitution, including soliciting, procuring, pandering, white slaving. Now, this is why I disagreed with you, because it is injurious. What is white slaving? That's sex slavery.
No, what I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm saying that they're not saying that these are illegal because it's harming
I know
other
that.
people.
I know.
They're saying it's because it's a crime against the federal revenue.
Yeah. Keeping house of ill fame and like offenses, extortion, swindling, confidence games, and attempting to commit, conspiring to commit, or compounding any of the foregoing crimes, addiction to narcotic drugs and the use of marijuana will be treated as if such were commercial crimes.
Yep. Because that's their commerce world. That's their business. Don't
That's
interfere in their
right.
racket. That's their racket.
They don't like competition. Now, but it still goes back to your status. Who are you? If you're a U.S. citizen, you're engaged in commerce. That's the reason why most, not all, but most of your, what do they call, your federal indictments, one of the first things they lay out is jurisdiction. And what is the jurisdiction normally? Violations of the Commerce Clause.
Yep. And this is why I said that this is why they said what they did in the first sentence of the First Amendment. Because if that first sentence of the First Amendment does not pertain to you, then everything written after that, including Code of Federal Regulations, all the statutes, those things are for you. But otherwise, if you fit into that first sentence, you don't have to worry about all the other stuff after that.
Okay, what is that first sentence?
Oh, go pop it up and get the exact wording there.
I just figured you might know it off the top of your head.
Congress shall make no law regarding an establishment of religion.
Aha.
So, how are you established? Have you established yourself? No? Well, if you haven't, then they're going to make the decision for you.
Yep.
And if they have to make the decision for you, then they're going to assume that you are a pagan. And so we've got to write a bunch of laws to govern your life.
Well, not only a pagan, but you're a ward of the state because they have to do everything for you.
Yeah, you're obviously of unsound mind.
Yeah, you want to shrink the federal government, lower the citizens. If you get rid of most of the citizens, guess what? Federal government has to get smaller because they have less people to take care of.
Yep.
But you got so many people that says, no, I want my welfare. I like my slavery.
They want to wave that flag.
Well,
They want to wave that flag and sing how they're proud to be an American.
Go look at what's going on right now. That Congress is looking at passing a law or has passed. I don't know which. But I know it's real big in the patriot community and everybody's irate. They're saying that they're trying to pass a law for veterans that the red flag laws applies to veterans and they can seize their guns.
Yep.
Now, me and you know the problem. Now, I signed up for the Navy, and I remember what the document said. At the end of all of it, it says, "Welcome to the United States Navy. You are now property of the United States government."
Yep.
If you're property, you don't have rights. You have benefits and privileges.
If you are property, that means you are a res, RES, you're res, and a res is property of a trust.
Yep. And so a United States citizen, I can't swear this enough, does not have access to the Bill of Rights. That is reserved for the citizens of the states. Now, I'm going to tell you what, a lot of people got angry. Go back over 9/11. You remember back during 9/11, I think it was 2 or 3 years after 9/11, there was this big ordeal about the quote unquote terrorist, if you believe the official story, about whether or not they had constitutional rights, right?
Yep.
See, here's the thing. We swear by that document. The Declaration of Independence says what? All men are created equal. By who? By God, by the Creator, right? So here's the question. If it applies to us in the US, it applies to everyone.
Yep. It didn't
Because
say all.
God,
It didn't say all men of the United States.
it said all men, which we know is mankind. Okay, so if all of mankind is created equal, that means everyone has the right to their own religion. They have the right to be secure in their papers. They have the same rights you do. The reason why the United States is losing their rights is, one, they don't know who they are, and you reap what you sow. You've went into all the, we have went into all these countries and tried to impose our will on people that didn't want us for oil and money.
Oh, Pastor, Pastor, we got to spread democracy. It's important. We spread democracy.
We're not a democracy. We're supposed to be a republic. You don't ever see them. We have to spread the republic, do we? Because the republic means people would be free. Yep. Democracy means you got two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner.
Yep. There you go. Majority rule, mob rule. Yeah, mob rule. That sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? Let's enforce mob rule.
So, but no, the Laches thing that you wrote, that was a really good article. I think it's it's people should read it. It's short, it's concise, and it's to the point. If you if you believe there is fraud going on, do not sleep on your rights.
Exactly. And this goes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, that the real problem today is that people don't want to worry about these things. They don't want to do anything until they get in trouble. And then once you help them out of trouble, boom, they're off again on their merry way. I'm sorry. Preventative medicine is the only real solution. You've got to take action and control of your life.
It breaks my heart to have to say it. But I have really come to the conclusion, I kind of understand why the system is the way it is, because most people they are heathens.
Well, you get the government you deserve, right?
Well, government is only a reflection of the masses.
Absolutely.
I mean, if the people are evil, the government's going to be evil. But you can't get the people to see that. Look, Romans 13, I am not one of those that takes Romans 13 and says you should bow at the feet of government. Okay? I'm not. But Romans 13 says that government was instituted by God to punish the wicked, right?
Yep.
And this is where the average person is holier than thou. They look at it and say that my neighbor, yeah, the cops come and arrested John next door because he's getting punished by the government because he's wicked. No. If the nation is wicked, the people, so follows the government.
Yep. And like you said, it's used as a punishment. If you go into the Old Testament, I can't remember chapter and verse right now, but it's where the people were being told, you have to follow Nebuchadnezzar. Do what Nebuchadnezzar tells you to. And when I first read it, it's like, it was putting me back on my heels compared to what I had learned growing up, in churchianity. And
Yeah,
I was like, whoa, wait a minute here. But when you think about it, it's like, it kind of makes sense. Nebuchadnezzar was being used as a punishment to the people. And if
yeah.
people want to look at the government today and say, oh, it's nothing but a bunch of thieves and liars and drug addicts and drunks or whatever you want to accuse them of, well, I say one thing. Look around yourself. Look who you're surrounded by. Guess
He
what?
without sin throw the first stone.
Yep.
And too many people today are throwing stones.
Yep. Well, Pastor, what do you think?
I will give you a little piece of news.
Sure. What you got?
I just finished paying for the United States statutes at large from 1789 to 2011.
Holy crap.
It's it's 40 boxes. I don't know how big the boxes are, but it's a lot of books.
Well, you'll be able to shepherdize anything that came out of Congress then.
Well, guess what? You remember some of those things people have said, like on the right to travel, like that's where they define the word vehicle as a commercial term.
Right.
Now I'll be able to prove it or not.
Yep.
Now let's explain something, because very few people know this. Since I brought up the U.S. statutes at large, I'm working on a website, and I'm actually looking at a membership-based private law library for the people. Okay. That will include Westlaw. It will include the statutes at large. It'll include a lot of the old books that are hard to find. But that being said, here's something I discovered in 2 states. Let's say you go to court. You got your citations, blah, 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 blah. You're quoting these cases. The judge ignores you. Why is that?
I'd say it's because you're not part of the club.
I understand why you say that, but that's not it. My friend David Roach made the discovery in Indiana. What you're not doing, you're not meeting the standard of evidence. It's hearsay. The judge doesn't have to accept hearsay. What you have to do, and this is in the Indiana rules, and it's
Yes, sir.
also in the New York rules, and I have not researched the other states, but I would be willing to bet it's in every state as rules of evidence.
You gotta get it certified.
You take the entire court case, you take the laws you are using. It doesn't even have to be up-to-date codes. Let's say you have a 50-year-old law book. And this is where you're getting your information from. Copy the pages out, copy the court pages, the court cases in their entirety, take them to the Secretary of State and have them authenticated.
There you go.
Now they meet the rules of evidence. And we found that when I said it doesn't matter if it's the law you're using, that goes right back to what we've been talking about this whole time, establishing who you are and your law. And it
That goes.
has to be bound to the laws of nature. You
Well, that goes-
cannot say you're lawless.
That goes right to 28 United States Code 1733. It says that the properly authenticated documents will be seen as the original.
Exactly. And that is what it says. That is what it says on the in Indiana on if it's older law books. We're not schooled in law, right? So the older law books, if they're authenticated and that's where you're getting your stuff from and you have that information authenticated, it will be seen as up to date.
Yep.
The judge just wants to know, are you lawless or not? The judge just wants to know who you are. Now my dad had a conversation. My dad has a private plate. Okay. He doesn't have a state plate. And he did a job for a guy that is a retired state trooper that taught LEO classes on the sovereign citizen movement. That's what he told my dad. And by the end of their conversation, he looked at my dad and said, "Let me tell you the truth. When you go to court, the judge just wants to know, what do you believe?" There's the First Amendment.
But where's your intent? Where's your state of mind, your mens rea?
That's right. I think that's a good place we can finish for the night, brother. And this has been Bryan Parker with Tactical Sovereignty. We have to plug your show.
Hey, sure, why not? Hey, and I'm on every Sunday night on Talk Show at 9 p.m. Eastern. So, and sometimes Pastor here even joins.
Yeah, I will try. I will definitely be getting back in the loop of things. I've been busy building a website, trying to get things set up because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be trucking. And I'll make that announcement on the new site where we can get, where everybody can go, because as soon as I can find me a paralegal that I trust that is also a typist to help me run the library, I'm going to definitely be announcing it for the people. And it has to be a membership base because it's got to stay in the private.
Absolutely.
But if you remember NAACP versus Button, the members of its an unlicensed attorney can assist the members of its organization. So I'm going to be looking for people of like-minded that knows the law and understands to let's start representing the people.
Well, and if you're having a private association, then as long as you trust the people that are helping out and everything, that's all that's really required. Nobody can step in and do anything. If you just look at, what is it? Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the Constitution, no state can impede on a contract.
That's exactly right. But if you remember, but you also means what? Now you can practice law properly because you're helping the members of your association.
Exactly.
That's my way to do it, so I don't have to get a freaking bar card. And I'm already getting the respect of attorneys. I got one attorney saying, "We need to get you in a law firm. You will be head and shoulders above everybody else." I'm teaching him things he was never taught. And it makes me feel good. I'm not going to lie.
Might even get
I
some
mean,
bar members burning their bras. I mean, burning their cards and joining the association.
you never know. I don't know where God's going to take me. I just know He's got something going. It's going to take me somewhere. So, well, brother, it was a pleasure as always. I always enjoy your input, and I respect it highly.
Yep, you and I could talk for hours if we wanted. So
Yes, yes, we could. So, everyone, this will be posted here in a little while, and I hope everybody enjoys the video.
good night, guys.